Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à le blog du Charlotte. Aujourd'hui, on va parler à propos des Canadiens et leurs relations avec les Premières Nations. On va commencer de parler à propos de l'autonomie gouvernementale des Autochtones. L'autonomie gouvernementale canadienne est créée pour que les peuples autochtones aient plus de contrôle pour les choses comme leurs droits, leur économie et leur culture. C'est une structure du gouvernement formal. Maintenant que cette structure est en place, les communautés autochtones avaient le droit à contrôler les choses comme leur propre terre et leurs propres ressources. Quelques organisations qui ont aidé avec ce gouvernement étaient l'Assemblée des Premières Nations, APN, et l'Inuit Tapri Kanamonti, ITK. Ce gouvernement permet les communautés autochtones de prendre les décisions qui affectent directement leur vie, favorisant l'autonomie et préserver leur langue et leur culture. Milliards de peuples autochtones ont pratiqué leur propre forme de gouvernement avant que les Européens ont arrivé à Canada et on voulait que ça continue. Je pense que c'est très important, n'importe qui tu es, d'avoir le droit d'avoir tes propres pensées. Et je pense que le gouvernement est un très bon exemple d'une façon qu'on a impliqué ça. Le prochain événement qu'on va parler de est la création de Nunavut. Avec une collaboration de les Inuits et le gouvernement du Canada, le Nunavut a été formé le 1er avril 1989. Avant que je parle plus, je vais te jouer une courte vidéo.
That it could fit entire countries inside it. Yet for centuries, it had no government of its own. A place where the people lived by their own traditions, yet had no say in how their land was run. This was life for the Inuit of the Arctic before the creation of Nunavut. But how did this territory come to be? What challenges did the Inuit face? And why did they fight so hard to gain control of their own land? Today, we're diving into the story of Nunavut, how it was created, why it was important, and what it means today. Brought to you by Super Simple Sheets. From coast to coast, worksheets that work. Discover the full range of what we offer at supersimplesheets.com. What is Nunavut? Nunavut is the newest and largest territory in Canada, covering over 2 million square kilometers, about 1/5 of the entire country. It is home to breathtaking landscapes, from vast tundras to icy fjords, and wildlife like polar bears, caribou, and narwhals. But Nunavut is more than just land and nature. It is home to the Inuit, who have lived there for thousands of years. Before Nunavut was created, this land was part of the Northwest Territories, a massive region controlled by the federal government. The Inuit had no territory of their own, and decisions about their land and way of life were often made without them. Over time, they realized that to protect their culture and future, they needed control over their own land. Why did the Inuit want their own territory? For thousands of years, the Inuit lived off the land, hunting, fishing, and traveling across the Arctic. But when Europeans arrived, things changed. Fur traders, explorers, and missionaries brought new goods and ideas, but they also disrupted traditional ways of life. In the 20th century, the Canadian government made major decisions that affected the Inuit, often without consulting them. Many were forced to move into permanent settlements, leaving behind their nomadic lifestyle. Residential schools took Inuit children away from their families, forbidding them to speak their own language. The government also made decisions about hunting, land use, and resource development that did not consider the needs of the Inuit. By the mid-20th century, Inuit leaders realized that if they wanted to protect their culture, language, and way of life, they needed a government that truly represented them. The long journey to Nunavut. The fight for Nunavut did not happen overnight. In the 1970s, Inuit leaders formed organizations to push for land claims and political rights. One of their main goals was to create a territory where the Inuit could govern themselves and make decisions that benefited their communities. After years of negotiations, the Inuit reached an agreement with the Canadian government in 1993. This agreement, called the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement, was the largest Indigenous land claim settlement in Canadian history. In exchange for giving up some land rights, the Inuit gained control over a huge portion of the Arctic and secured rights to manage their land, water, and resources. The final step was political, creating a new territory. On April 1, 1999, Nunavut officially became Canada's third territory, marking a historic moment for Inuit self-governance.
Comme tu as vu, la création de Nunavut était très importante pour le développement du droit des Inuits. C'est aussi très bénéficial pour les relations entre le gouvernement inuit et le gouvernement canadien. Maintenant, on va parler du crise Oka. Le crise Oka est une confrontation de 78 jours en 1970 avec les Kanasateg et les forces canadiennes proches à la ville du Oka en Québec. Cette dispute a commencé à cause de proposition d'une expansion d'une cour de golf sur la terre du communauté Kanasateg. Ils seulement voulaient défendre le territoire, mais chose allait mal quand il avait la violence avec la police. Voilà quelques clips qui parlaient un peu plus à propos.
Well, I think one of the most important examples of current Indigenous resistance was the Oka crisis of 1990. The Mohawks of Ganasatagi, a small territory reserve near the township of Oka, were resisting the expansion of a golf course and a condominium setup that was going to infringe on some of the last remaining pines, wooded area that they used for their ceremonies, lacrosse, and part of their graveyard was contained in this area. So in 1989, 1990, they started campaigning to stop this. They organized protests. They had petitions. They went to city council in Oka to try to stop this expansion, and the city was just arrogant and just would not listen to the people. They began a blockade of a small dirt road in the pines in Ganasatagi, and they maintained this little blockade for a few months. The township of Oka tried to get a court injunction to order its removal, and on July 11th, the Quebec Provincial Police sent in a large, heavily armed force of tactical officers armed with M16s and tear gas and that, and they went to dismantle this peaceful blockade. But by that time, warriors had rallied to the defense of this blockade and this struggle to protect the pines. And so behind the protesters there were armed warriors, and when the police came in shooting tear gas, the warriors engaged them in a short firefight, and one of the police officers was shot and killed. After this shootout, the Quebec police retreated. They abandoned most of their vehicles, and this began a 77-day armed siege of the Mohawk community in Ganasatagi. That same morning, Mohawks in Ganawagi seized the Mercier Bridge, also with arms. They seized the Mercier Bridge to place, as an act of solidarity, but also to place pressure on the Quebec government, because the Mercier Bridge was a vital commuter link into Montreal from the suburbs. And I mean, 100,000 people a day were using this bridge to get to work and to do their business in the city and that. This siege began. There was thousands of police deployed. Eventually, after 2 or 3 weeks, the Canadian armed forces were deployed. They deployed an entire brigade of 4,500 troops, complete with armored units, armored personnel carriers, tanks, helicopters, jets, artillery units, and naval forces as well, to contain these two communities of Ganasatagi and Ganawagi. There was mass rioting by the white Quebecois Chateauguay, residents of Chateauguay, a nearby town, demanding that the military go in and crush this uprising. So it really inflamed a lot of the local racial tensions. Across the country, there was a widespread solidarity movement that arose to defend the Mohawks, and there was protests all across the country, occupations of government offices, occupations and shutting down of bridges, railway lines. There was sabotage, electrical pylons were downed, bridges were burned. So the government of Canada was facing an insurgency that was arising from this standoff, and this was the main contributing factor, of course, that limited the military violence by the government. And the 77-day siege ended when the armed Mohawks burned their weapons and walked out of the final area that they had been contained in. But they refused to surrender, and they got into clashes with the military and the police as they tried to enter this area. But that was the ending of the 77-day siege. Something like 30 or 40 of these people were later acquitted on the grounds of self-defense in court. And the golf course and the condominium project were never expanded. So the Mohawks were victorious. And not only were they victorious in their local struggle, but they helped inspire Indigenous resistance and set the tone for Indigenous resistance throughout the rest of the decade of the 1990s and even up to this day.
Comme tu vois, la crise a été très bénéficiale pour le développement des Premières Nations. Maintenant, on va parler des écoles résidentielles. Pour une période de plus que 150 ans, les enfants Premières Nations étaient prendre de leur maison et prendre à l'école résidentielle. Dans ces écoles, il y avait des règles strictes en place pour que les enfants ne pouvaient pas pratiquer leur langue ou leur culture. Ces petits enfants étaient malnourris et punis physiquement pour parler leur langue ou pratiquer leur culture. Ça a évidemment causé beaucoup de morts. On a aussi découvert beaucoup de mass graves sur le territoire des écoles résidentielles depuis les ans après les écoles résidentielles a fermé. La dernière école a fermé en 1946, laissant milliards d'enfants traumatisés. C'est un passé terrible du Canada, mais ça encore existe et on devrait prendre responsabilité pour nos actions. Merci pour écouter ma vidéo et n'oublie pas de donner ma vidéo un grand pouce en haut. Au revoir à la prochaine vidéo!